think many times when you talk about these types of games, the focus is obviously on the quarterback. But I would say in this scenario, Howard is going to have to make some plays at some point. That's what he's going to have to be able to do. And he's shown that down the stretch. He obviously didn't make enough plays at Michigan, and he turned the ball over as well. So he's got to be able to make those plays when they put him in a situation, because this is a good defense that they have. They're going to make some plays on that side of the ball. But if they can run the ball and establish the line of scrimmage, I think that's what they ultimately have to be able to do. And also, remember, they've got a guy out there at the wide receiver position that, man, first of all, it's a shame that he still has to play college football, because he should be on the NFL roster right now in Smith. But, they've got to find ways to get the ball to their wide receivers. And that offensive line, yes, it was beat up the last time they were out, but hopefully they've had an opportunity to get healthy and be in a better spot. But we're gonna find out. I mean, this is the last time Ohio State was in this type of situation. They went on a run, and when I say that situation, when everybody is against them, they're talking about firing the coach. They're talking about this roster that's 20+ million. They're talking about a coaching staff that's most of those guys, except I think one, maybe two, are all making $1 million plus. The coordinator's $2 million. So there are a lot of expectations that were heaped on this team all year, and they unfortunately weren't able to deliver. But everything they have and trying to play for is still right in front of them.
Don't believe in the coaching. Don't believe in the quarterback. Can't go far. Unfortunately, they're one of the teams that's built at an elite level at the top, but high enough to where the fall is going to be detrimental. And you got to see a sneak preview of that in the Michigan game, to where an inept quarterback with a coach that's born on third base, you're going to have troubles against teams that are more equipped than a Michigan defense was and a Michigan offense was, and you're going to see a difference. Now, we know what Ryan Day looks like in pressure-type games. It just happens to his schedule allowed him to have a lot of free passes. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty and you break down those numbers, you start to get concerned, because now all these games are pressure games like the Michigan game was moving forward, where you may not be the outright top dog regardless of where your number is, just from the perspective of what you bring as an intimidation factor. There's no longer an intimidation factor after watching that Michigan game.
I'd agree with you. I mean, listen, what you're saying is all factual information. I mean, anybody can look and see that this is what, in pressure situations and pressure games, particularly against against Michigan, they have not been able to live up to the pressure. The only thing I would say is that now that pressure is gone. So now they're playing free. And that, is part of, why I think this ends up being a really good game. And they don't look as bad as they look against Michigan because they play tight. And there's no question about it. It was a tight team, period. And, whether that's just all the buildup of not being able or finally having something that everyone, all of their stated goals was obviously they wanted to win a national championship, but that all had to start, that run in previous years all had to start by beating Michigan. This year, that wasn't the case. So now we're going to find out. And this is, is the pressure on? Yeah, they'll tell you it's on. But this is an opportunity now for Ryan Day to make that next step. And he has to, quite frankly. Otherwise, it's going to be a tough offseason if they are out of this game, playing a home game versus Tennessee, and they don't come out victorious in this. This is going to be a little bit of an issue when you start talking about off seasons for Ohio State.
So you don't think the pressure being mentioned is overstated in this situation for Ohio State and what they're facing? I really feel bad for the players, to be honest, because, look, they could have very easily beaten Oregon on the road. It was right there for the taking. One or two plays here, they probably beat Michigan, right? So from a player's mindset, it's like, we can win. We know we can win. We know how good we are. But in the same breath, are the players thinking like, man, is our head guy, is he good enough to get us over the hump in a big game? I'm just trying to figure out, does that type of thought come into your mindset as a player?
Well, I think if the players execute the way they need to, it doesn't get to that point where it ends up being a tight game. They have to go play free. That's at the end of the day, that's what they have to be able to do, because all of those things are going to be out there. If this thing is tight going into the fourth quarter, all bets are off. Whoever executes the best at that particular point is the one that's going to win. But it's interesting when you talk about a player like Will Howard. That has been the challenge, right? For Ohio State, for all of the players that they've been able to bring in, they haven't necessarily been able to get necessarily the right guy, or even try to develop that guy since Justin Fields walked out of there. And it's tough. You've got to make an evaluation. You got to say, okay, this is the guy that's going to fit our scheme and what we're trying to do. I thought personally, when they went with Will Howard, that they were going to be a run team. It was going to be more read option. It was going to be heavy run and throwing every now and then. I didn't think it was going to try to be this wide open offense because I didn't think he was that guy. I can tell you, first time I saw them in the spring, he threw an interception to the defensive tackle. And I left that practice like, I don't know if this is going to pan out. But then he went on a little bit of a streak. He went on a little bit of a run. But, man, everything's magnified. You guys know it. Everything's magnified at the quarterback spot, particularly if you're leading a powerhouse program. And not only do you need to learn how to play quarterback on the field, but you also need to learn how to be the quarterback at that type of place, because the pressure is immense. I don't have to tell you guys that. And I think that's one of the things that Will is going to have to deal with until he can finish the deal, get him to a championship, or his eligibility is expired. Yeah, I would say one of their biggest issues is they've not addressed, and they've had injuries, but they still haven't figured out the O-line. For this team to be as talented as they are, to not be able to run the ball whenever they want to run the football, that's to me the problem. That to me is a bigger problem than at the quarterback spot, because if you could run the football, you'd be able to hide some of the other issues, and you'd be able to make some more of the bigger plays down the field that they need to make, as opposed to a lot of the crossing routes is what they had to go to later in the season. Otherwise, they're throwing up 50-50 balls to Smith, and he's going to come up with those because they're not 50, they 90-10 when you throw into him. So,
but in fairness too, I mean, shoot, Ohio State doesn't go against many teams that stop their run.
Well, I disagree now. I mean, what Ohio State's been able to do is they've been in certain situations, they've been able to lean on teams to be able to take that away. To me, like versus Michigan has a much better defensive front than Ohio State, and Ohio State has all the names and all the money on their defensive front. But this Michigan defensive front is much better, much more physical at the point of attack. And really the Oregon defensive line is as well. So when you see Ohio State make a lot of plays from the defensive end spots, it's one-on-one situations, and they're supposed to win those. They absolutely are supposed to win them when you have projected first round and top and second round draft picks at those two positions. But what they haven't been able to do is run it. Now, individually, which is crazy, these guys are really talented on the offensive line. But as a group, they have not been able to get to the point where they can just control games. And that's part of the issue. When you're forced to come up 2nd and 8, now all of a sudden you got to throw the ball around 3rd and long. You got to still throw the ball around. It kind of handicaps you. And listen, it's one of those things that, again, this is going back a couple of years about them not being able to really control the ball, control the line of scrimmage, which is why Lou Holtz threw out the thing that they weren't very physical, essentially is what he said. And when they came out, I think it was 2 years ago, and they finally ran the ball and really controlled it, the first thing out of Ryan Day's mouth was the comment toward Lou Holtz, which that should have been the furthest thing from his mind. But that kind of gives you the insight of just how much pressure is involved in what he needs to do at Ohio State. It ain't easy. It ain't easy at any of these places, and particularly if that's your first job. You've got some issues and some stuff you got to deal with when everybody 365 days a year is worried about Michigan at Ohio State. That is everything to them. Whereas in Michigan's got to worry about Michigan State. You know, they got to worry about some other rivalries as well that they have to pay attention to. At Ohio State, and I think players and coaches will tell you, when you're in that facility, it is all about Michigan. And when that doesn't happen, when you circle the calendar that this is what it's about, and you don't get there, man, and that becomes your stated goal, which it has been, and you don't execute and you don't get through it, this is what happens. And that's why, you know, depending on who you're listening to or what people think, everyone believes that if he does not go deep in this playoff run, you know, he's going to be, his job security would be in jeopardy. So, you know, who knows? I think, you know, the athletic directors come out and said it's not going to happen. He's going to be the quarterback next year, the coach next year. So you just have to see, but that's part of the deal. But I do think the narrative is, I think they have to make a run. If they can't make a run, I mean, this is going to be tough sledding for this program moving forward.